Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. First off, a huge thank you to Tom for being here with us. Our last interview on Matrix Listen received an overwhelmingly positive response, and we are thrilled to have him back to share more of his insights. For those of you tuning in for the first time on our channel, I'd like to mention that Matrix Listen features not only content with Tom. So this is for the viewers who view this on Tom's channel. We have a German channel called Matrix Listen, and it's not exclusively but for Tom, but it's also for other topics that are really interesting and alternative. And yeah, you should check it out. We also have a dedicated YouTube channel titled My Big Toe auf Deutsch, and this channel not only extends to Tom's teaching to the German-speaking audience, but it's also backed by a community on both Telegram and WhatsApp. And the team behind this channel has put in a big effort to translate Tom's videos, making it accessible to a wider audience. So we encourage you to not be shy. Check out these channels. Engage with the content, join the conversation and the communities. And if you find value in anything you see, you can show your support by making a donation to Cusac, Tom, Matrix Listen, or My Big Toe auf Deutsch. Would be really appreciated and support and provide a lot of help. Thank you. So without further ado, let's dive into our conversation. Do you want to say anything, Tom?
No, that's fine. We're ready to go.
Okay. I have a question about the topic of personal and social transformation. It's about addiction and recovery. So in Germany and also in the US, as I noticed, there are many people caught in the cycle of drug addiction, which destroys their lives. And I was wondering, how can loved ones and also society effectively support these individuals who are struggling with addiction? And yeah, maybe we can start with that, and then I ask some.
Okay. Well, yeah, what can we do about it to help? Typically, addiction is driven by the desire of somebody to self-medicate. And that means they have problems, they have issues, they have depression, they have things that aren't going well in their lives. And the way they escape those things so they don't have to deal with them is by taking a drug. And that then becomes, the serial. They do it again and again, and then eventually they end up being addicted, which then adds just one more problem to their list of issues. So it's better to look for causes of things rather than just symptoms. So for causes, I would say talk to the person and get their assessment of their own life. How successful do they feel? How much fulfilled do they feel? How happy are they, or how depressed are they, and so on. And I think if you do that, then you will get some sense of why the person started playing with drugs in the first place, in order to escape unpleasant feelings. Usually the unpleasant feelings a person's trying to escape is unpleasant feelings about self. They don't like themselves. They find themselves wanting. They find themselves not good enough, not adequate. And that's the thing that pushes them then to do the drugs and then eventually become an addict. So that's kind of typical. Now, obviously, there are other cases that don't follow that line, but probably about 80-90% of drug abusers follow that basic tendency. They're trying to erase what they perceive as their own failures by taking the drug, and while they have the drug, they don't feel failed. They don't feel inadequate. They feel fine. none of those previous problems that occur while they're under the influence of the drugs. So it's an escape for them. So start with where the problem is. If you can ascertain more specifically where it is than just the generalities I've given, that might help. Because behind that dislike of self is a fear. There's a fear someplace that's driving the whole thing. And if you can find that fear, you can probably help them become aware of it, become aware of the choices they made because of that fear. And that may give them some incentive to actually work on the fear rather than just medicating themselves out of, knowledge of the fear. So that would be one thing to do. Make friends with them. Get, what can you do to help? Be a close friend, an intimate friend, a friend that, that they can talk about to, almost anything. So that would help. And 2, don't be negative about them. Don't tell them, oh, look what a mess you are. Look how you're ruining your life. Because all that does is feed the problem. So don't be negative. Be positive. Try to build up their self-esteem. Try to invite them places or take them places. Maybe you have a family gathering, and your family gathering is all full of happiness and joy because your family is not dysfunctional, but it's a very functional family. Well, bring them with you sometime to a family get-together, picnic, something like that, and just let them hang out with functional people. Sometimes just being around people who are functional lets them see an example of how things can be. So be a friend. That's one thing. Secondly, you can look at their social support system. Does it encourage them to continue the drugs? If what they do is only hang out and only interact with people who are also drug addicts, then that's a behavior that helps the drug abuse continue. So there may be something you can do to help that environment out, get them someplace else other than around a bunch of other people also abusing drugs. So if you can take them out of that situation, that may be difficult to do, but perhaps there's perhaps they have family and there's some family member that would, take them on for a while. I don't know, but getting them out of the environment that kind of pushes them toward the drug, which is an environment where they feel inadequate. Help them find a job. Give them a lot of positive feedback. That's kind of the best things you can do. But realize that most of the time, you probably won't be successful. Some of the time you'll be successful, but most of the time, probably not. There's nothing, you can't make choices for somebody else. The way you make choices for somebody else is, I guess you go to a courtroom, have those people declared unable to take care of themselves, and then put them in an institution or do something like that against their free will. But that's a last resort. You don't want to override people's free will. And realize that some people are just bent on self-destruction. They don't like themselves, and destroying themselves is something that they want to do. And often with those who are committed to that, there's nothing you can do about it. You can be a friend, which keeps them more positive. but eventually even that can be difficult. So realize that what you can do is limited. That's another important point. Don't you start feeling like a failure and taking the drugs with them because you're not able to help them out. You have to stay positive all the time, that you're around them, and realize that you may not be able to help them. They have to get into a situation where they want to help themselves. They want to quit. They see promise for themselves. They see that they could do better and be better. They, you encourage those kinds of feelings. So that's about as much as you can do. There's programs that sometimes work if the person really wants to get off the drug. There's lots of, medical and social programs for people who are trying to get off drugs that are usually group, they're like group sessions. And those can be very effective, but you have to start with somebody who wants to get off the drug. If they just pretend to want to get off the drug, or they're just going because you asked them to, it won't work for very long. So the key is to get them to have enough positive vision, enough positive attitude that they want to get off the drug. And then you can just keep feeding that positivity. If they don't have any positivity, then it's really hard to make changes. You may just have to be that they've lost the will to improve themselves. So there's not always a solution. That's one of the sadder things about drug abuse, is often the drug abuser, particularly if he's taking, quote, spiritual drugs, unquote, like ayahuasca, things like that. They believe that they're getting more and more spiritual and spiritual information because the drug is sometimes used that way by the indigenous people. But that generally turns out to be just false. It's just the way they feel about it. It's not actually true. From my experience, the people who take drugs like ayahuasca eventually end up taking them again and again and again. If it's just a one-off, well, that's not a problem. But if it's something that's done over and over, that becomes the problem. Though they become convinced that they're more spiritual and with bigger understanding than other people because they take this drug. You don't evolve the quality of your consciousness by taking a drug. That's not how it works. You have to do the work. You have to change who you are. So they just feel like they're so much more grown up than they were. But most of that is just in their own mind. Like you get a bunch of people who are drunk on alcohol together, and they all feel like they're brilliant. They can solve all the problems of the world and then wake up the next morning and not remember any of it. But they're not really solving anything. They just have a tendency to feel like they are brilliant and have all sorts of solutions. So I think most drugs let you forget reality and easily let you engage in a fantasy and support the fantasy. So that's not a very happy answer to that question. But in many cases, you just can't do very much except support what's there that's positive. If you can find something there that's positive, support it, feed it, keep trying to make it a bigger part of their life. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's their dog, maybe it's their children, something that's positive, and work on that. See if you can get them to see that everything would be better if they weren't addicted to the drug, or everything would be better if they didn't even take the drug, whether they're addicted yet or not. Drugs don't solve problems. Drugs only exacerbate problems that are already there or create new problems. But nobody solves a problem because they take a drug. Now you're talking about, what is it? Psychotropic drugs that affect the mind and consciousness.
Or people who are not addicted to a degree that it makes their life really hard and uncomfortable. I've seen methods where people can fight wouldn't be the right word, but they can manage their addiction by specific techniques. Like, have you heard of the easy way method?
No.
Well, it claims that people don't have to stop taking drugs by using their willpower, but by especially not using the willpower. Because if you use your willpower to stop taking drugs, then you always put in so much energy and effort. And what it teaches you is that you don't want to take the drug. So it takes you no effort to stop it. Like a meditative approach where you notice that whatever or whoever tells you that you want to take the drug is not you, because you don't want to take it. So I think this is a very valuable approach to trying get a different perspective of how your mind works and how you can deal with addiction.
Anything that allows the person to become more positive will be beneficial. If you can get them to believe that they don't want to take the drug, it's something else. It's their fear that's pushing them, and therefore they can push back against that fear. Any kind of thing like that might be helpful to some people. So you can always try those things and see.
Because the books usually they logically explain to you why taking the drug is irrational and not bettering your life, and why every argument that your mind produces to tell you otherwise is a lie. And that helps the people to know this is, I want to take the drug because it makes me feel better. But that's not true, because it will make me feel better in the short term, but it will make me feel really bad for a long time. So stuff like that is, it's in the argumentation. So I had another idea. I imagine that there are people watching us right now who have problems with addiction, and I was thinking maybe you could kind of talk to the camera and tell them something positive, so it could help them.
Well, I would just help them perhaps see the situation that they're in, that if they're taking a drug to self-medicate to escape a problem or escape themselves, escape their own low opinion they have of themselves, that all of that gets worse by taking the drug. So rather than taking the drug solving that problem, taking the drug exacerbates that problem, adds to that problem, makes that problem worse. So there is no, the drug doesn't actually make it better. It just appears to make it better in the person who's taking it. But as far as our connections with everybody else in the world, it makes it worse. It only seems better in their own mind, and that they're actually destroying their social connections, their friendships, their responsibilities. They actually are destroying that by letting their fear push them into drug addiction. So if I could get that point across, maybe it would give some of them the strength and the incentive to want to do better, because without that strength and incentive, mostly they don't do better. They need to have a reason to change.
Do you think, people who have a limited view of how reality works tend to have it harder to see a positive way about living because I don't know, most of them think that everything's negative, and when you die, you just stop existing, and everybody, like nihilism is just very, very attractive for.
Yeah, well, that's true. You could explain to them the big picture and how reality works. Although they would probably have a tendency not to believe you if believing you made them feel worse. They're going to do what it takes to put a salve on that burn, that burn feeling inadequate, that burn that is that fear. So they're going to want to continue to put a salve on that. If you just turn up the heat on it and make it worse, you may just make them worse. So you have to be really careful. You don't want to contribute to somebody's alcoholism by trying to fix it and actually making it worse. You have to be careful not to become part of their problem. But yes, the big picture can help if they can handle that big picture. But if they're already taking too many drugs, they'll probably look at that big picture and reject it because it doesn't tell them what they want to hear. You can try being very positive with them. Look at all their good points, the things that they could contribute, things that they could be, and help that. But often that will just make them feel more like failures because they're not any of those things that they could be. So it's easy to become part of the problem with talking with such people. Now, sometimes, when we talk about drugs and psychotropic drugs, some can be very helpful. Like there's millions of people who take, say, SRIs, serotonin, retake, SRI, reuptake inhibitors. In other words, the body will destroy serotonin trying to keep a balance. But if it destroys too much, then you end up with not enough serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. So it's part of how the central nervous system works. And if you don't have enough of it, then you tend to be depressed, find problems, have a negative attitude. So in that case, taking this pill that makes you keep the serotonin longer is a good idea, and it helps. Now, the problem there is that it could be the reason you have the low serotonin in the first place is because of negative attitudes. Well, if you have a negative attitude, then the mind leads, the body follows. Eventually, the body will start producing less and less serotonin in order to match physically the condition of the consciousness. So if the consciousness is depressed, the body will rearrange its chemical structure so it supports that depression. So you end up, it's not easy to decide for any individual what's the cause and what's the effect. But there are lots of people, whether they cause their own depression or not, they get benefit from taking an SRI kind of pill. It increases their serotonin, makes their life better, that they're not so negative about themselves and life, and suddenly, the whole world starts to get better for them. So in that case, it's a positive thing. And SRIs obviously is psychotropic substance. So I don't want to throw those kinds of things in the same bag with the recreational drugs that we're talking about. Some drugs that we know enough about them to use them clinically can be helpful. And maybe one day some of the drugs like, ayahuasca may be used clinically because we'll understand it well enough to do that. But right now, most of the drugs that are psychotropic, that are not established medicine, they tend to be more harm than good. maybe one day we'll use them wisely and they'll do more good than harm. But right now, those kinds of drugs are the difficulty. So I'm not saying that people should stay away from all drugs. Some drugs can be very helpful, but they need to make sure that how helpful they are is not just a figment of their own imagination, but is actually real. And if you want to know that, ask other people. Am I better now or worse? Ask your boss at work, how am I doing? Am I more productive or less? And if you start getting negative results, then no matter how you feel inside your head, it may be hurting you. So it's worth collecting information on. So yeah, a big picture might help. Having somebody that really, finding a significant other, somebody you fall in love with that falls in love with you, that can change somebody's whole viewpoint. Suddenly life is good and wonderful again. And so you won't find that if you sit around in a drug stupor. If that's a possibility, well, make it a higher probability by interacting with people who aren't on drugs, people who are positive, people who smile a lot and have cheerful dispositions. Connect with people like that. Go to places where people like that hang out. Then you raise the probability that one of those will connect with you. And that could be very positive. But if you're, sit in your room in a stupor, your probability of finding people like that is 0. So start doing things that raise the probability of a positive ending rather than a negative ending. You say, well, I tried that, doesn't work out. Well, you maybe didn't try it the right way. Maybe it didn't work out because you took your drug use to that venue rather than letting it go. Maybe it didn't work out because you haven't dealt with the fear. But any little bit of positivity that you get can be a stepping stone to a better place. But you have to, number one, want to get to a better place. If all you want to do is dull the pain, then there's not a lot of things that are going to get you out of that. If you really want to get to a better place, a place without the drug where you can function and make connections with people that are lasting, then there's something that can be helpful. Lots of things can be helpful at that point. But the biggest thing is, how much do you really want change? I only want to change because everybody tells me I should. That won't work. I only want to change because my family, is pressing on me to stop taking these drugs. That generally doesn't work either. You have to decide, I want to change. I want to be different. That's, important. And if you can't get there, then there's little hope that you're going to get that much better. You probably just get worse. It's that failure to thrive, the inability to find positivity in life, inability to put much credibility and hope. Those are the things that depress people, and then they go out and self-medicate. So,
you just said something interesting. You said that addicts want to dull the pain. So would be a remedy for addiction be to just feel the pain and to endure it and to accept it?
Well, they should realize that pain is fear-based. It's not, for the most part, it's not going to be an organic pain, like they have liver disease or something, then maybe they just have pain. But most of the pain that people feel in their life is kind of self-defined as pain. Life isn't the way you want it. That girlfriend you wanted, went the other way. It's not what you wanted. And then because it's not what you wanted, you are negative towards yourself. Start telling yourself, of course, you don't deserve it. And it's that negativity aimed at self that is the big creator of the problem. And if you really want to get off of drug addiction, one of the things you can do is, every day spend some time being positive about you. Find things to be positive about. On the way home, I stopped and helped a kitten cross the street or whatever. Just things that you did that were helpful to something or someone or somehow. And if you can kind of focus on that, that can help. It's just you have to get some positivity in to supplant the negativity.
Well, a lot of people think that the positive thing is the drug, but I guess it only...
No, it only makes everything worse. You can pretty well guarantee that a psychotropic drug will, well, if taken regularly, make everything in your life worse. If taken twice a year, 6 months apart, it probably won't have that big effect on you. But if you take it once a month or, once every 2 months or some kind of you take it and you expect to take it again and you expect to take it again, then it's going to have a negative effect on your life. We don't know enough about them or we're not clever enough to use them in ways like we use medicine. We don't know enough about them.
Still sounds like the advice you give to almost everybody, like life throws something at you and you just need to deal with it. Like things are not going your way, and don't feel bad about it or don't try to control it. Just learn to accept whatever is happening. And
yes.
And maybe even, I guess, love whatever is happening and trust that everything will turn out the right way.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. It's, my philosophy is not a very complicated one. It's pretty straightforward. And yes, those simple points pretty much will help you. What your problem is. Be positive. Care about relationships. They're important. Connect with other people. Share your feelings. And be positive. Be positive, be positive, and be positive. If you can't say anything that isn't, that's not negative, then just don't say anything at all. Just be quiet. Only speak when you have something positive to say. Same with thinking. If you can't think something positive, then stop thinking. Just make your mind blank. Stop thinking. Only think things that are positive.
Great advice for people who are experienced meditators.
Yeah.
It's a perfect segue into the next question, because we were talking about connecting with other people, and I feel like it's a trend on social media nowadays that people talk about narcissists and narcissism. And I was wondering, could you share your insights on this topic? The term seems to be broadly used, often to describe those with whom one disagrees, like if a person was in a relationship with another person and didn't work out, it always sounds like they were a narcissist, and that's why it didn't work out. I don't have anything to do with the problems that occurred. And on the other hand, there are truly people out there who are narcissists and who can cause problems. And maybe you can go a bit into that. Do they just have a big ego, or is there something else going on?
Well, the true definition of narcissism is that it's an extreme version of self-centeredness. Okay, now most people are self-centered to some degree. Most people make their life about themselves getting what they want, themselves getting what they need. And they, life happens and they try to manipulate life to be the way they want it. That's typical. That's the way people are. Well, that's very self-serving. It's just about them, their needs, their wants, their issues, and anything that is not on that same page then is part of the problem for them, and they discard it. So that is just being self-centered, and it's as normal as breathing. It's as normal as dirt. Most people are self-centered to some significant degree. Our culture does that to us. Our culture tells us we need to be self-centered. Our culture says, you need to look out for number one. Look out for yourself. If you don't look out for yourself, nobody else is going to be looking out for you. It gives you that kind of a message, which is a message toward being self-centered. That we get lots of messages of we are we're being abused. We're being tricked all the time by marketers. We're being tricked all the time by politicians. We're being tricked all the time by false information. And then you get into the sense of being a victim. And when you're a victim, you tend to be very self-centered and have you have almost no will. You're just a victim. Gotta wallow in that victimhood, because being a victim gives you an excuse for why you're not doing well. Well, I can't help it. I'm a victim. It's not that I lack gumption and I lack fortitude and I lack get up and go to get out there and get things done. It's because I'm a victim. So it's an easy cop-out on life in general. So yes, there are a lot of self-centered people. But those people who are extremely self-centered is who we call narcissists. And there's not as many of those as you might think by listening to the chatter. Yes, on the social media, you think that every other person's a narcissist, but that's just a popular epitaph to call people now. But it's generally not so true. Yes, most people are self-centered, and even to a pretty large degree. But narcissism takes it a step further, where you're so self-centered that other people almost cease to exist. Other people cease to become important or significant. Only you and yours are significant or important, and everything else is not important. If you get to that point, then you probably fall under a narcissist. You're so self-centered that it's very difficult for anyone to relate to you, because you only relate to yourself. You only care about yourself. You don't really care about anybody else. You use other people to get what you want, but you don't really care about the people you use. They're just there to use to get you what you want. So that's kind of an extreme self-centeredness. Something else that's interesting about being self-centered is that your degree of self-centeredness is basically your degree of growth, your degree of maturity, if you will, the degree of quality of your consciousness. The more self-centered you are, the less quality of consciousness you have. So that's a good measure of maturity. Someone who's growing up, it's how little self-centered are they. The things they do, the things they say, the actions they take, are they all for themselves? Because those are things they want. Or are they being helpful to other people rather than just being helpful to themselves? So that's the idea around self-centeredness and narcissism. There's no clear line exactly when one becomes the other. Somebody who's extremely self-centered and somebody who's narcissistic. When does that extremely self-centered turn into a narcissist? Well, there's no clear definition of it. It's just extreme self-centeredness. And self-centeredness is common to almost everybody. It's just not so extreme in most people. Most people do have, most people do care about others. They have other people in the world whom they appreciate or care about or are interested in. It's not everything. It's not just about them. So there's not as many narcissists as we might think. That's almost a hard category to actually get in. But some people do qualify.
Some people want to be the best in everything. I was thinking, for a highly evolved person, or consciousness that is exactly the opposite, that doesn't have a self-centeredness at all. Does it work like this? Such a being would only exist for serving the larger consciousness system, and from that viewpoint on, would this consciousness start to care for themselves and to keep themselves healthy and ready and functional to be capable and as much of service as possible, because you would think that the person who cares about themselves in any way would have at least some degree of self-centeredness, but without self-centeredness, there's still some motivation to care about their own body. I hope this makes sense to the people, because there's probably also this belief that if you're not self-centered anymore, then you don't care about yourself or about your body. I think you have to unmute yourself.
It's not like that. When you are other-centered, that doesn't mean you forget about yourself, because part of what you contribute to others depends on yourself being, aware, on yourself being healthy, on yourself being somebody with which other people would like to communicate and connect with. So part of your being able to help is that you don't smell bad, you don't act badly, you're not rude. All these kinds of things make you, more accessible to and more friendly and more positive with other people. So you don't stop taking showers because you don't care about yourself. That's not what being other-centered means. It means you try to optimize your ability to give. Well, if you don't have anything to give, then the first thing you're going to do to optimize your ability to give is work on yourself. That sounds self-centered, but now the first thing you need to do is work on yourself so you have something to give. So you develop yourself, you develop skills, you develop ideas, you develop social skills, and you are able to interact with people. And now that you can interact with people well, you can be helpful to people. If you didn't have those social skills, you wouldn't be able to interact with them very well. So you have to take care of yourself as well as care about other people. It's not the action that is the point, it's the purpose behind the action. The action of taking care of yourself can have a purpose behind it that's both good and bad. The purpose behind taking care of yourself may be, I want to look better and be better because I want to, get that girl, or I want to get that job, and it's all about what I want, and that'll help me get what I want. Well, then those are things that are perhaps self-serving. But if you want to be healthy, look better, feel better, have some cash in your pocket, all those things, might be self-centered, or they could be. You just need that in order to be helpful to people. You can't be as helpful to people if you're a down and out, guy that lives under the bridge. It's hard to be very useful to anybody else when you can't even be useful to yourself. So caring about others requires you to care about yourself. So it's not the doing things or caring for yourself that's a problem. It's why are you caring for yourself? If you're doing it because it helps you get what you want, it helps you abuse other people, you can come on and be really slick, like, you're a great person, and then just take advantage of people and use them. So that may be one reason for taking care of yourself. Makes it easier to abuse others. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can want to be helpful to other people, and that's why you take care of yourself. So taking care of yourself is a necessary thing. You can't function without that. If you can't think coherently, you smell bad, your language skills are very poor, you don't speak very well, none of those are going to allow you to be very helpful to other people. Most other people will shun you if you don't have a certain amount of social capital, social skills. So caring about others doesn't mean that you don't care about yourself. It just means your motivation in caring about yourself is because it makes you more capable in helping others. So you do take care of yourself. You do have to get a job maybe to keep money for paying the mortgage and putting gas in your car. There's things you have to do. Because if you just sit home in your basement of your parents' house and don't do anything or don't go anywhere, well, you're not much use to anybody else. You're just, you're too self-centered. It's all about you.
Great. Thank you for this answer, Tom. Sometimes it's hard to know what your own motivations are. So how can one truly know if they're doing it because they want to help other people, or if it's just the ego telling them, you are doing it because you want to help another person and you're a good guy and everything, but truly you're just doing it out of egocentric motivation. You don't need to.
That's true of most people. If you went up to 100 people and asked them, are you self-centered? I would say 99 of them would say, no, I'm not self-centered at all. I know about other people who are self-centered, but I'm not self-centered. Nobody feels like they're being self-centered. Everybody feels like things they're doing are just reasonable things that need to be done for obvious reasons. Nobody feels that everybody is self-centered. Pretty much. It's a very rare person who isn't. So there's a problem here as far as self-perception goes, Almost no one sees themselves as self-centered, but they see lots of other people as self-centered, but not themselves. That's kind of the way it is. It's like nobody who has a belief really sees themselves as a believer, or that they have a belief. Because if you believe something in your own mind, that thing you believe is now a fact. That's what believing it means. So you don't have any beliefs. There's just these facts and understand that help you navigate the world. They're all facts. When in fact, probably 80 or 90% of all the things that most people think are facts are probably just beliefs and opinions. There's not a whole lot of facts. out there.
Well,
So anyway, yes, it's it's easy to convince yourself. It's easy to convince yourself that you're a wonderful person, generous, other-serving, take care of people, give all the time. I'm always giving to other people. A lot of people feel that way. And the ones that tell you about it are the ones that are probably most self-centered. Because the ones who really do give just because they do, and they don't even really notice it much. The ones who are very much aware of everything they do that's helpful to somebody else. These are usually people that are being helpful for the wrong reasons. They want credit. I'm being helpful, so I get some sort of credit for that.
Is becoming authentic one of the ways to notice about your darker and egotistical aspects? So you will be at least one of the 1% who can say, actually, I do have desires and egotistical tendencies, and I'm not full of, I'm not 100% love and giving, but at least I know that about myself, and I can change that, and I can work on it. In the same vein, I can be true to myself and live that openly.
I think that's a good attitude. There's very few people who can lean back and examine their life and say, "Oh, I'm perfect. You know, I do everything just right and always do it for the right reason." And maybe a few people that actually could do that honestly, but very, very few. You realize that you're somewhat like everybody else. Now, there's some outstanding exceptions, but for the most part, everybody has some fear. Everybody has some self-centeredness. Everybody has some negative feelings about themselves. Not being good enough, not being strong enough, not being smart enough, not being whatever. And there's many people who blame others for all their problems. Oh, I wouldn't have gotten angry except so-and-so said this. And the reason I'm upset is because, George said that, rather than taking responsibility for being angry and for being upset. So, yes, most people are like that. But if you understand that and say, okay, here's the way I am. This is the way I really, but it's not who I want to be. I'd like to grow up and not be that way. Well, now you can start working on the fears that tend to make you that way. Because if you ever get upset or angry or feel unappreciated, misused, all those kinds of negative things, if you feel that way, and I don't mean just once in a century you feel that way, but if that describes your life, if you feel that way a lot, then you have fear. Because without the fear, you don't feel angry. You don't get upset. You don't have those negative attitudes. So that's a good measure of how you're doing. How am I doing on the entropy reduction test? Or how am I doing in growing up and becoming love? Well, just think, how often do I have a negative feeling? Do I feel bad about something? Do I feel annoyed? Do I feel stress over things? Do I feel unhappy, unappreciated? That's a good test, because if you're feeling these negative things, that means you have fears. And if you have fears, that means you probably make a lot of your choices because of your fears. It's not really you and your free will making the fear. Making the choice. It's actually the fear makes the choice. You make the choices you do because of the fears that you have. Now your life is really being run by your fear. And that's not a good position to be in. So when you realize that, you say, well, how can I change? And don't pick the biggest, strongest fear you have to change first. Just pick one that's smaller. Get a sense that change is possible. Get a sense of the methodology required to make a change. And then pick on the bigger things in your life, because they're harder and will take longer. Starting with them often ends up in people throwing up their hands and saying, it's impossible, I can't do it. But they need to start small, work toward the bigger fears later on, after they've conquered a few of the smaller ones.
Well, okay. So I think I haven't heard you say anything about the topic of end-of-life decisions. In our culture, we have no problem with euthanizing animals who are in pain and severely ill. I've heard some people say that we shouldn't be even doing that because their life cycle ends when their life cycle is supposed to end. And on the other hand, we try to keep humans alive as long as possible with machines and medications and everything. And do you think there's a benefit of aiding people to die? And, well, there's also cases where people want to end their life prematurely, although they're not physically ill. It's just suicide.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's definitely reasons why somebody would want to die. Often it's because they may have a terrible disease, or they may feel themselves slip sliding into dementia, or some other kind of lingering thing that makes it really impossible for them to grow anymore, because they don't really have much cognitive function, but they suck up a lot of money and resources just keeping them alive. They don't really interact with family. They don't know who their own children are. They're just kind of gone. Then what is the point in such people keeping on? They don't make choices anymore. They just kind of go with the flow. So yes, there's cases where you'd say, it's this person would be better off to just recycle, end their cycle here, and let them start another life someplace else. Just keeping them here as a vegetable, just because we can keep them alive, is not a kindness to them at all. It's a way to milk older people for all the resources. So you have a medical establishment that would like to keep everybody alive as long as possible. Sometimes because that's where the money is. A lot of older people have resources. They've worked all their lives. They save money. They've got these resources. And you tend to keep them alive as long as they have resources. When they run out of resources, then we don't care so much anymore. And we dump them in a state institution or someplace. It's cheap. But in any case, yes, there are cases where euthanasia is a good idea. And that should be a person's choice, just like any other person's choice. It's a free will choice that, as long as it does not hurt other people. You have responsibility. If you have 10 kids, you have to keep fed and housed and clothed. And that's your responsibility because they're all your children. than just saying, well, I'm going to opt out now because I'm too busy. It's too much trouble. Well, that's opting out on your responsibilities. And that would be no, that's not a good reason. So there's a lot of bad reasons too. So a board of ethicists should probably sit down and come up with some sort of sorting of the good reasons versus the bad reasons, and what makes one different from the other, because most individual cases are going to be individual. They're not going to fit a norm. You can't make rules that fit everybody. It takes someone with a brain to look at the facts and decide whether this is a good thing or not a good thing. And maybe that would be a job for a medical ethicist. That might be a position at a hospital or at an old folks' home or some other medical professional who just specializes in making those kinds of choices. And when they say, yeah, it's a good idea, euthanasia is a positive thing here or a negative thing there, then the person disagrees. They may have to go get another opinion. It may end up in the courts. So it wouldn't necessarily always be simple. But I suspect 80% of the cases would be simple. They'd be people with dementia who occasionally wake up and have their wits about them for 10 or 15 minutes or a half a day and then drift off again into nothingness. While they're cogent, offered the chance, I suspect a lot of those would say, why don't you just end it? I don't have any value in it really anymore. Just end it. Particularly if they know that once it's ended, they just start over. So yes, can be a good idea in special circumstances.
How is it from the perspective of the individual unit of consciousness or the healthy? Why can't they just log out of an experience where they don't have any value anymore? Or why doesn't the LCS kind of facilitate this exit? You would think that if you're the player and the body is your avatar, you can just decide from that perspective to end the experience.
In some ways you can, and a lot of people do. Now, if you look at people who get terminal illnesses, you'll find a subset of them are people who are called dead enders, where their life's kind of dead ended. They don't really want to go on living. Their relationships have gone sour. Their jobs have gone sour. They're in some kind of a situation where they feel like they're at a dead end. They're out of good choices. And people like that tend to get ill, tend to die. If you have that kind of an attitude, you're more likely to die in, the next 5 years than people who don't have that attitude. People have good, positive attitudes tend to live longer. So some of that is happening. It is natural selection that people that feel like they don't have much point in being here do tend to find ways to escape, usually through some sort of illness or accident. But we would have to be careful because that can be abused. You always hear about, well, what if all the greedy heirs, so somebody who had a lot of money and a bunch of greedy heirs get together and say, well, we think Grandpa, ought to be euthanized because we'd all like to have his money. We're allowed to wait for him to die. Well, that would be an abuse. That's why you'd have to have some kind of medical ethicist who's understanding and job, would protect people like that. So you'd have to go through some process that would look at your life, look at what was going on, and see whether or not euthanasia was an acceptable option. So it would be probably irresponsible to just say anybody that walks in the door to some medical facility and says, I'm done, here, give me something fatal, just to say, well, okay, you have free will, we'll give you something fatal. That's probably not such a good idea either. People tend to change their minds and get depressed and say things that they won't mean, a week later. And those kinds of big decisions should be made over some time and involving some people who can really help them sort out the details. So it's not just so easy as anybody who says, well, I'm ready to go, so here, end my life. Then I would say, no, that's not yet a situation that qualifies. It's better if you feel dead-ended to change yourself, learn a new career, get going, make new relationships, get back in the game and be productive. So that would be a better thing to do. So you can't just let anybody who wants to opt out. But there should be some reasonable way for people who should opt out, so they could opt out. If you really don't have much potential for growth and learning in the future because you're mentally dead, or you are done, or maybe your body is so racked with illness, you can't even get up and pee on your own anymore. You're constantly just a drag on both the medical facilities and your own finances, but you're not going anywhere. It's not helping. You're not getting better. And there's really no prognosis for you to get any better, only for you to very gradually get worse. Well, I can see that would be a time when the medical ethicists would say, sure, this makes good sense. But there'd be some way that it would have to be tested, so that the good choices would be moved forward and the bad choices would be set back to try to fix their lives in some other way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that answer. I have a last question for you. It's centered around the formation of Cusac and the future of MBT. I'm just going to read it out loud. Tom, with Cusac now established, what are your aspirations for the future of this organization? How can the community contribute to ensuring that it remains a positive force and avoids devolving into negative aspects such as cult dynamics centered around your personality? Are there specific measures or philosophy you would like to, or philosophies you would like to emphasize to guide the organization's development?
Well, I'll give you credit for asking me a question that I've never been asked before. That's a new one. Yeah, I'm in the process now of kind of weaning myself off of, managing all of the MBT and Cusac choices. Right now, I pretty much make all the choices. Well, I have been making all the choices. I'm the one guy at the top who says yes or no to every event and every program or whatever else. And I'm trying to get out of that because I'm not going to live forever, and I don't want the MBT organization to fall apart just because I'm not here. I want it to be able to be vibrant and go on. And I'd like to guide that transition, so I don't want to wait until I'm on my deathbed before I think about it. I want to think about it now while I'm still fit and healthy and able to be part of the process. So in doing that, or in accomplishing that, I put together, I shouldn't say I put together, but people have put together a new 501c3 that's a not-for-profit, so not taxable. You can give money to that without paying taxes on the money. Organization that I'm going to let them handle all of my intellectual property. So anything that I've done or created, they will be able to let other people take that and go make money on it, use it, but for a fee, for 10% kickback or 5% or whatever warrants. So that way get independent people taking MBT stuff out, making programs like one enterprising fellow is starting a fear clinic. So if you want someplace to go to help work on your fears, well, he can help you with this fear clinic. You see, and he charges for that. So he gets paid, and he takes some of what he gets paid, and he slips back into this hub is the organization. And the hub keeps some piece of it, and some of it slips back to me because it's my IP. So that is an organization that's just been started recently. Now, how do I keep something like Cusac on target? Well, it's impossible. All you have to do is you give it a charter, like all those organizations have to have reasons for being. You set it up as a nonprofit corporation, which makes it financially transparent so that nobody can fiddle with the books because the books are all right out for the public to see. And you put good people on it. After that, there's no fail-safes. People will be whoever they are. Now we need to get some more donations into Cusac so we can do the next set of experiments. The first set of experiments worked. We're not entirely done. We haven't been done at 2 universities, and one of the universities has finished. The other university is finishing soon. And from the one that finished, it worked out the way I said that it would work out, so that's good. So we'll do the next one. The next one I'd like to do is one that's more dramatic. Maybe would attract even more attention. And we could even do the first one again with another methodology. The methodology in collecting which-way data, that's which slit did the particle go through in a double slit experiment. It's called the which-way data. Methodologies to collecting that are very difficult. And right now they're all collected by using entangled particles. That's the method that seems to work best. But that also creates issues that come with that methodology. So we're really looking for some new ways of approaching the problem that don't have those issues. So there's a lot of things that we can do if we had the cash to do them. So I'd say there's no way that I can guarantee the future, but I try to pick good people, have a good organization, a good charter, and good definition, and it does what it does. After I'm no longer around to look after it, but I'll be around for another 10, 15 years anyway. So, but I want to get less and less involved, so I'm more on the sideline and the organization can work without me. So when I am finally gone, there'll hardly be a blip. It'll just keep on keeping on, doing its thing. Whether I'm here or not won't be a big deal, because I gradually remove myself from being that upfront one that makes all the choices. So there's no way that you can guarantee the future. The future just will be whatever people make it. Yet, you can hope for the best, give it all you've got, and then it's up to somebody else to carry it forward after that.
Do you think there has to be somebody who is in charge, or can it be like learn itself? several people who are delegating? Does it have to be a structure where one person has to be in charge of everything?
I don't think it has to be just one person. I think it can be a group. But yes, eventually somebody must be in charge. Like even if you have a corporation, like a nonprofit corporation, all right, that has a board of directors. It also usually has a board of advisors, people who will advise it on various things. Then the board of directors have to make a vote on things, but some directors are more persuasive than others. You know, some maybe do most of the work and others not so much. So typically the ones that do most of the work are the most persuasive and where to go next. So it does often boil down to just a couple of people. That's true. But it's empowered within an organization that doesn't have a lifetime. So a 501c3 not-for-profit can live for 1,000 years. Well, it just keeps getting new board of directors every 2 years or 3 years. You put new people on it. So you don't get one person with a vested interest who's been there 50 years and now is become the dictator. Yeah, every 3 years or so you get new seats in their board of directors.
I just wanted to focus on the point from the question about the cult dynamics and centered around your personality. I don't think this is the case at the moment. I don't know anybody who's like Thomas Campbell is our guru or something, but I could imagine that something like this is possible, especially in the future when your ideas spread more and the organization also grows, because you are a charismatic person, you're very knowledgeable, and you wrote a book that explains how reality works. So, yeah, maybe there's something you can say to these people, or maybe you can say something in general that would diffuse this as a possibility. Yeah. You have to unmute yourself again.
Okay, so Tom Campbell can be used as a symbol, as someone who figured it out. Can be used. Oh, I don't know what can I say? As an example, perhaps. That's okay. I don't mind that, but the organization and the things that Tom Campbell talked about, you know, the ideas, the view of reality, the kid method of all of us, that moving toward love is what our purpose is, and all the rest of that is the logic embedded in the My Big Toe. That should be what's important, not Tom Campbell. That it's possible to grow up and get rid of a lot of fears. Well, that's good, and you can point to Tom Campbell as an example of the possibilities. But that's if it gets too much to be about the person and not about the ideas, then it collapses. It doesn't last very long. It needs to be about the ideas involved. And it needs to always change. And it's not that it has to remain the same with great purity of message either. Times change. As times change, it needs to be translated into words and metaphors that are meaningful, at that time. And that's part of the problem we have with many of the scriptures. Particularly within the older religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, we have all these wonderful explanatory texts, but they're all written in poetry. They're not written in 21st century scientific, logic. They're written in poetry. So they have to be interpreted. And anything that has to be interpreted is going to be interpreted 100 different ways. And there will be no truth. So you have to take things like that and re-express it in the words and the metaphors of the current time. So there'll always be room for others to step in and change the word and change the concepts a bit. The Buddha and I agree on almost everything, but he said all these things 2,500 years ago. What he didn't say was, how to derive physics from consciousness. You see, he didn't have those kinds of things, but that's because there was no such thing as physics when he was doing this. It didn't exist. There was no science like that. So anyway, I would expect that the message would change and grow and get better and better as time goes on. And hopefully it won't end up in some kind of a religious thing where purity of knowledge is a big deal. I'd like lots of people, thousands of people, to go out and talk about MBT, give lectures, produce products, go out and give talks and have people pay you for that, to attend those talks. That's fine. And the message doesn't have to be checked for purity as to, is this what Tom Campbell would have said? The speakers just need to be honest. This is my interpretation of what Tom Campbell meant. If you want to read the original, well, here's where you can find them. But this is my interpretation of them. So that's fine. And let even people who disagree on the interpretation of them go out and do this. I don't mind that at all. That just gets people thinking and gets people wondering. They can always go back to the source if they want to know what I said about them. But there'll be new things that will develop after I'm gone that I won't say anything about because they happened after I was gone. So people need to talk about those things in terms of it. So I encourage lots of people to go forth and, make a few dollars on MBT if they can figure out how to do that. There's room for lots of tools and tool sets and programs, ways to help people be successful in their meditation and healing. There's lots of things that people could teach and be a part of. So I hope that over the time, these things will develop and there'll be a lot of people who will take the message forward. If not, it'll just basically grow old and get smaller and smaller group and then disappear, except for in a few books that, created it for something or another. So I guess that's my hope for the future, is that people take it and go do things with it, apply it to their life, write books about how that worked out. When you apply it to your life, what did it do to your life? How did it work? And what worked and what didn't work? These are things that can be helpful to other people. So if that happens, then I'll be very pleased with the results. And I'm trying to encourage that to happen by setting up this hub that would be kind of the center of licensing my intellectual property. So that's kind of what I hope. And Cusac, once the experiments are done, that will have its kind of mission changed a little bit to just trying to encourage people to see the connections between consciousness and science, that those aren't two different things.
So the next question is about singularity. There's this concept of technology advancing to such a degree that, as far as I understand the concept, everything becomes meaningless because everything is possible and happening at the same time. Like technology is evolving or getting better at a non-linear rate, and at some point it just explodes and everything is possible. What about that concept, and can you say anything about that?
Yes. Well, it's an intellectual concept that will probably never happen. It's been predicted from many different reasons. I guess some people would have said, when we started the Industrial Revolution, that was going to cause a singularity. And suddenly all goods and products would be made by machines and everything would be cheap. And it generally doesn't work out that way. People adjust to the situation. So let's say we get science and technology gets to be so much more plentiful and cheaper and available. Well, attitudes toward what people want may change. They may not be interested in more technology. They may be interested in more quality. Quality of life. Not necessarily something that'll wash the dishes, scrub the floors, cook the meals and clean the house, but realize that in those mundane chores, there's growth, there's quality in doing those chores. People doing them for other people. And that the ideal life is not sitting on your butt, on a sand dune someplace watching the waves roll in. That's actually kind of boring and not as social and as connected and as meaningful as you'd like it to be. So there may be lots of technology, but I don't know that the need for that will blossom with the technology. There may be a lot of technology that really finds very little need. Now, what I hear mostly talking about the singularity is with AI. That AI, when AI gets to the point that it's smarter than we are, depending on how you define smart, it may already be at that point. But when it gets considerably smarter than we are, maybe even with intuition, then the rate of new learning would be mainly among the AI. And humans would just kind of top out on what they could comprehend. And the AIs would start to comprehend so much more. The more you understand, the easier it is to understand more. So they talk about that as being like the point where humans become irrelevant. And that's a singularity. I doubt that will ever happen because humans will change. We have this false idea that humans will always just be the way they are now. A bunch of self-centered people hanging around trying to figure out what's best for them. That's the way humans are now, but humans may not always be that way. The whole game may change. The whole sense of what's important may change. The whole sense of what technology is good for. Or what does it offer and what does it take away? All of those things might change. So I don't think we're actually going to get this singularity where the world blows up because it's changing faster than anybody can keep up with, except for the machines. I think that the humans will change in a dramatic way.
Well, that happens. I didn't understand you. Did you say the humans won't change or they will change?
I think the humans will change.
Okay.
What they value, will change. If they don't value learning more and more, stuff, then the more and more learning becomes useless. Nobody needs it. Nobody wants it. Nobody cares about it. And the fact that machines can now do, 1,000 times more than they could do last year isn't really important. So it'll get to the point that what we value will change. And it's not like everything new that people understand is going to be some monumental discovery that will change the world. It won't be. Most of it will be just details, things that aren't that important. We've got right here now all the things we need that are important. We have a theory of everything now that talks about science and consciousness, the subjective as well as the objective world. So with that understanding, there's not a lot more that will make big differences in our life. It's a matter of people now using and optimizing what they've got, what they understand. So in that case, we would shift this idea that we start from Stone Age people up to now, and technology's been the big driver. He who has the technology wins the war. And that big driver may disappear. He who has lots of technology may not find anything really too valuable to do with it. So we don't know, but I wouldn't jump to conclusions about some big disaster happening in the world because AIs have gotten smarter than us. It would be probably good if AI got smarter than us. We're not real smart. It would be good if we had something a little smarter than us to do a lot of the paperwork and track a lot of the things that need to be done, find ways to do them better. That would be a good idea. And of course, there will be things that are combinations of us and machines. The integration between people and computers is just also a brand new area of expertise. So that would be more of a scary thing than just super smart computers, because then you'd have maybe a human with a low quality of consciousness, but yet a brain and a body to do big things. That wouldn't be so valuable. That could be destructive. But we'll find our way through it. Even if we go backwards for a while, we'll find our way through it. Next time we get there, we won't make the same mistake. So maybe we'll tend to flame out, 4, 5, 6 times in pockets, but there'll always be enough left to come back. And next time, don't make the same mistake and go on. So we humans will eventually get to the point that we are largely low entropy, high quality beings. And the world will be a pretty nice place, and the computers will be friends and coworkers. So I think that's probably where we're headed. I don't see doomsday.
I wasn't asking the question because I thought that the singularity was necessarily a bad thing. I kind of interpret it as the simulation ending. And maybe one case for the simulation ending is that everybody comes to the conclusion that we are all one consciousness. That's how I also heard the term singularity, that we are one singular entity. And maybe the technology facilitates this process.
Well, the term singularity comes from mathematics, and it's like a divide by zero. If something gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, goes up faster, then suddenly it goes all the way to infinity. And then it comes down the other side. they call that a singularity. Like if you have a function that occasionally goes to zero, and you have that function dividing some other function, then every once in a while that denominator goes to zero, and the function, they say, the words quote unquote are, it blows up. And it is, in that when it blows up, it is a singularity. So I think singularity goes to something progresses or grows or advances so quickly that it goes beyond our ability to comprehend it as a real thing. Okay. Going to infinity like that, there is no place called infinity. You can never get there. But you can, mathematically, you can disappear to infinitesimal on one side and reappear to an infinitesimal on the other side, coming back down. But there isn't any real place called infinity.
Well, this would also explain why the singularity is not a real problem, I guess, because it's a mathematical function.
Yeah, it's just the term singularity comes from that math. So it's just when something grows so fast that there isn't any way to predict what happens, where it gets to, what the results are. But often those singularities then come down the other side just as fast as they went up. And that indeed may happen as well. If things get out of balance to the point that they get self-destructive, then the plummet will be just as steep as the rise. And humanity will have learned something. Maybe next time they'll be smarter and do it better. So,
well, like you, I also don't really see a negative future. I'm quite excited about the AI and everything like that, because it gives us so many new opportunities, and it's also kind of quite fun and interesting to live in a time where science fiction is happening. And
yes, indeed. It does give us new possibilities and opportunities. It's just, we've been in this race. Humans have been needing to grow up to deal with the technologies that they create. And if the technologies we create get too far out ahead of us, and we're not grown up enough to deal with them, then we could get, disasters like nuclear war, nuclear fission and fusion bombs being a high technology, but people acting like, third graders out on the playing field, fussing and arguing and fighting with each other all the time. Those are not the kind of people you want to be in charge of that kind of technology. So there's always this race between us growing up as a people, getting rid of our ego and fears and becoming more logical, more rational, more ethical. And then we have our technology that enables us to go faster, higher, better, quicker. And if we are still very low quality, that higher, better, faster multiplies that low quality. That's the problem. And that's, I spent at least a chapter in my book talking about that situation. But that's always been a problem with humanity. We're inventive and we invent things and come up with new ideas. Then can we grow up fast enough to actually use those inventions for good things rather than just for better abilities to imply control, power, and force on others? Or can we think of something better than more control, power, and force in order to with them? Well, we'll see, because this singularity they talk about, where the computers are smarter than we are, is coming up pretty soon. And we'll just see how we deal with it. Can we deal with it intelligently and logically, or there's that lower part of us that has a very low quality? Is that going to get hold of it and turn it into something ugly. Hard to say, but we'll learn. The species will learn, and we'll come back from any disaster that happens. It won't kill all of us. We'll be enough to come back, and we'll have enough memory that we'll say, next time, let's not fall in that trap. Let's do it better. So we'll keep chugging along in our evolution, one way or another.
There are always other virtual realities that can hold some players.
Yes, there's always other virtual realities. If this one gets so messed up that it doesn't work anymore, there's other virtual realities. Or they could just take this one back to a certain period before things went bad and give us another chance to see if we can't do better.
And maybe this already happened right at that point.
Maybe it has happened multiple times. It's hard to say. Those are questions that are too far ahead for us to really be able to answer them. But it's possible. Could have happened before.
Yeah, doesn't even matter that much. My positive prediction about the future is that if AI can do most of the things that we do right now, getting to connect in real life with people becomes most valuable, because this is something that AI won't be able to do at any point. Just the real connection between humans in real life. We probably have virtual realities where we can meet, and those will be great too, but having like live concerts or live meetings with people, I think after what's happened at COVID, where those things didn't really work or weren't allowed, I guess AI is making them more valuable now so they can profit from that.
Yep. If we're just smart enough to try to make it work for everybody rather than a few people try to grab all the marbles for themselves, then we'll probably do very well. But if we get stuck back in the old warlord mentality of control, power, force, and somebody tries to grab all the marbles they can, and then we'll be having to work on our quality of consciousness for another millennia or two before we maybe get another chance. Hard to say.
So we'll be sitting in a cave somewhere and drawing animals on walls, thinking about what we could have done better.
Yeah. Will be.
Let's hope that this won't happen, and we all be good and evolve like we should.
Yeah.
Be kind to others.
We'll see. We could evolve pretty quickly. Given the right stimulus, we could evolve, over maybe just even 3 or 4 generations. It's not that long. Yeah, within a century, we could evolve a lot, but we're not doing it yet.
I think
the pace is quickening.
The main issue is that everybody thinks that everybody else should evolve, but how do you get every person to do the work themselves? To be like, it's not like the world has to evolve, but I have to evolve, and then everybody else can be infected with my influence, be pulled by my evolving.
The problem is that almost everybody believes that they are evolved. Most everybody is, of course, not involved and has a lot of fear and a lot of self-centeredness, but all those same individuals who are full of self-centeredness and belief and fear, they all think they're highly evolved. And it's the other people who need to evolve, not them. So we have to get past that barrier, and then evolution will happen more quickly. that could happen in 10 years. That could happen in a decade. It's just an attitude shift. Attitudes can shift pretty quickly.
It's still on the verge of happening or not happening, and how can we tip the needle in the right direction? And I understand that it's not an intellectual problem or a systemic problem where we have to change something in the external world. It just seems like it either happens or it doesn't happen, and the only thing I can do at the moment is to evolve myself.
That's it. That's your maximum contribution to the world, is to improve yourself. We'll see how it all goes, but I think we live in interesting times. We may take a giant step backwards now and then, but we'll keep evolution. It's slow, but it's relentless. Evolution just keeps chugging along based on the environment it has. It's just finding ways to, the evolution of consciousness is what I'm talking about. They're finding ways to grow. Some here, some there. So we'll eventually get to that place where we are a race of highly evolved individuals, but we're just not there yet. At best, it would take us probably 20, 30 years to get there. If everything went right, maybe a millennia or two to get there if everything doesn't go right.
I would really hope for the former one. I don't want to reincarnate into cave somewhere.
Yes. Well, it'll be whatever it is, and whatever it is, it's what we deserve. So it all works out. Well, thank you for inviting me and offering this thing to Matrix Listen. I've always had a warm place in my heart for Matrix Listen. It's a great website. Oliver did a great job when he was alive. He put all kinds of interesting things out there. I've read most of them because he made good choices of things that seem to have credibility but were really odd or strange or unexpected. That's come with them, things he put out. I was one of them, so I'm a big fan of Matrix Listen. The idea of continuing Oliver's work is a good idea. And Oliver and I had maybe, 7, 8 interviews. And I'm happy to continue that process with you and any others as long as I can. So it's a great organization. So I appreciate you inviting me and asking me and the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Tom, for giving us this opportunity. You offered to help Matrix Listen. We accepted because we really like to have you on the channel, and you give us so much value. And we're also all very, very thankful for what Oliver did and how he started this. And we're glad to continue what he started. And it's like Cusac, it's also still evolving. And with or without him, we try to bring good information to people.